Started the recording. All right, we're good to go. Half the battle's done here. All right, everyone. I'm really, really excited about this interview today. For those of you who don't know Alex Sexsmith, he's been in GRC. Alex, how many years now? It's been quite a
No,
bit.
actually, not that long. Junko suggested it, I think, early last year to one of the regeneration pollination conversations.
I think you joined around the same time I did then, and we just kind of
Okay.
like I just assumed you had been here forever, so apologize.
I assumed the same of you.
Yeah, because I'm fairly new as well. So imposter syndrome is big. But Alex has been looking into alternative building solutions on and how can we be more responsible, and has a wide variety of knowledge and understands a lot of the issues around these things as well, and why are we suffering with some of these adoptions. So I'm hoping you guys get a lot out of this conversation. As always, let me just look real quick to make sure. Okay, I do not have a hard stop on this, so
Okay.
time permitting, we will go on at the end of the call. I will do a formal end of it, and then we'll just see whoever wants to keep going on here. However, I'm not volunteering Alex's schedule, so whenever he says he has to go, we do need to respect that one.
Rough it out.
And if we enjoy this one so much and we want to come back to talk about specific things as well and get the conversation going even further, I'm more than welcome to have whoever else come on and we can interview as well. So one more time, as people come in, I'm going to keep spamming that. It's just to let the new people have access to the spreadsheet so you guys can see the interview series. And let's kick this off. Alex, so happy to have you here. If you don't mind, we're getting ready to jump into this big interview. We're going to ask a lot of questions about the details around this. But if you can, please, I know you have a presentation. Can you get us sort of spun up to what you've been looking into, the premise and the context around what we'll be talking about today, and any of
Yeah.
the big takeaways you want to go ahead and throw out there right away?
Yeah. So, my name is Alex Sexsmith. I've been practicing as an architect for about 20 years now, and it's really the last, where are we, 2026? Yeah, four or 5 years that I've really been kind of accelerating this bio-based material deep dive, and specifically about hemp-lime construction. And the reason that I got into it was I had to deal with a water-damaged house, meaning black mold. And so originally the inquiry was about what is the most mold-resistant form of construction. And when I got into looking at hemp lime, I started to see the connections between bio-based materials and carbon reduction and material toxicity. And then I started looking at this as a really a different form of construction that started to upend my, I would say, my perspective on sustainability, or what it truly means to build a regenerative building. For those of you who are aware of the Living Future Institute, they're one of the, I would say, one of the key players in the US and globally, but mostly US, working to accelerate this conversation around regenerative buildings, buildings that give back. In 20, let's see, I forget when the Bullitt Center was built, but there was a very famous building in Seattle, built by a group called the Bullitt Center. And Dennis Hayes, one of the founders of Earth Days, was the generating force behind that. And if I look at it today, I went to the Living Future conference in 2018 and saw a beautiful building, a very energy efficient building, but by 2025 lens, or 2020, now 2026 lens, a building that was built primarily out of extractive materials, concrete, steel, aluminum. And so the question that I began asking myself in 2025 is it possible to talk about a regenerative, I will be in just a moment. Yeah, is it possible to talk about regenerative buildings with extractive materials, or can we just basically say that's the direction that we're headed? So I made a brief presentation of what I normally share. This is a larger hempcrete construction or hemp lime construction and architecture, reframed for this, really so that it's not about me talking, but about stimulating a conversation and dialogue and questions. So as you can see here, straw, like wheat straw, rice straw, kanaf, hemp, bamboo, rapidly renewable materials that are all used in the world of construction now, and and that I think we need to be moving towards primarily because as codes have been getting more and more stringent in the world of architecture and construction, we can see that the building energy use, which used to be the big piece, all the energy that we were putting into heating and cooling because we decided glass skyscrapers or poorly insulated buildings were a great idea. And so as those codes got stricter, the next main hurdle, moving from operational carbon to embodied carbon, became the next big piece. And so I started, well, I'll go back for just a second. So to me, this means we need to move primarily towards a bio-based material palette for our buildings. And the idea, obviously, I've been focusing on hemp-lime construction, but that only takes you so far. And so to me, the takeaway began to be really about bioregional approaches, which is something that I've heard in this both in this call and another GRC call. So it seemed appropriate to talk about this with Sage. And and so once you start moving in that direction, you got to ask yourself the question, are all bio-based materials regenerative? Or what happens when you mix bio-based materials with synthetic materials? So you can see the image on the right, beautiful rain screen made out of a rice husk and PVC composite. So to me, uh, it may provide more durability, but it also starts to create a material that has both synthetic and natural mixed together. Whereas this is a bio-based block, a hemp-lime block from Italy that's hemp, lime, and water, and I think some probiotics. So some cases, in many cases, the bio-based solution can be reducing carbon, but if we start thinking about this lens, as soon as you say carbon, you also presumably mean carbon and methane, right? Carbon and methane and all the toxic chemicals. So material origin, system impact, some different ways of talking about a lens through which to look at materials in terms of provenance. And and so if we look basically in the global market, past year, 2025, a lot of attention started coming to straw bale because it's an agricultural waste product that's available in many parts of the world and specifically in the North American market, but also in the European. And and there were some really great fire tests, insulation tests that were really starting to prove the performance of this. So, one of the questions that's going to come up about what the data is telling us, and I think big picture takeaway is the data is telling us we need more data. So, like colloquially, we can say a bio-based material is a good start. You've made a good start in the right direction in terms of carbon sequestration, in terms of a natural material that's going to improve soil health, depending on how the crop is harvested. But that because it's a bio-based material, there can be a huge range in terms of uh, density of crops, height of crops, how successful they are. And therefore, if you're trying to quantify CO2, huge amount of CO2 variation. This is a photo from some of the fire testing. This happened both last year, both for straw bale and for hemp lime. 1 hour tests and very positive data on towards the possibility of a successful 2 hour test. And then thinking about all these different certification systems that they are metrics to be able to help push us make more informed decisions, but they only go so far and they have a specific lens, right? So their lead has been able to, from the US Green Building Council, has been able to move the market in a really amazing way. And yet it's aligned to the current realities of the architecture and construction world. It's not, it hasn't been shifting that reality as much as we would like it to. And in fact, that's how the Living Future Institute was born, is to kind of move the needle a little bit further. The Well Institute trying to push that lens a little bit more towards the building occupants than the building itself, um, ending up roughly in the same place, but that's kind of the lens difference there. And then a lot of one of the buzzwords, the metrics that people are looking at, life cycle analysis. So you've got a great idea, but does that thinking carry through all the way throughout all the production processes and even through the end life of the product? Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. Um, Carpet systems, which are made out of primarily nylon and plastics, actually these days have a great recycling program at the end of their life. And so for me, part of this has also been about seeing the ways in which this kind of regenerative thinking is pushing further and further into the entire market. But but I think what we're all really after, at least many of us on this call, this holistic, integrated thinking, so that we're not just talking about buildings, we're not just talking about landscapes, we're not just talking about carbon, we're talking about how all these things are interacting. So when I look at this, I think about, say, the urban heat island effect, and I think about land use policies, and I think about materials, all of these coming together in ways that say we want something that's as natural as possible, or as mimicking as close to what the natural landscape was there before, while still creating a modern environment. So a photo of the International Code Council. Let's see, the last few years, so 2022, 2023, 2024, was a big push for the Hemp-Lime world to get this form of construction into the International Code Council, which is basically the US. It says international, but it's really the North American market. They make decisions about the kind of model code, and then state building codes are based on that. So that there was positive adoption at that level nationwide for straw bale, for hemp lime, for light straw clay. And then the challenge of bringing all of that into state building codes is the hurdle that we're all working on now. And then finally, thinking about all the different ways in which, if we're tracking carbon in a project, the foundation, the concrete, the insulation, all these different pieces, and asking ourselves, how can we take this kind of data and do a remix to try and understand how to build better buildings. So that's the quick overview, and then yeah, happy to change it more into dialogue land now.
I love it. I love it. Guys, I've been putting the link to the speaker sheet. So those are the questions that we're going to follow along. I will try to weave your questions into this as it has the right time and sort of the right flavor on this to make sure it works well. And ultimately, I'll do my best to get this question. So I think we're gonna have a great chat here. So I'm gonna start actually in question two first. From your vantage point, what feels like the most misunderstood aspect of bio-based building today?
Mm. To me, the education gap is really about understanding these materials as either lower performing or less durable than than the materials that we use in, say, industrialized construction. So if you look, the origin of hemp lime construction in France, really, or at least the modern formulation of it, was renovating, rebuilding 400-year-old homes. And so that tells you there's a certain level of durability there that most modern homes can't even come close to matching. Straw bale houses, I think the first one was done in Nebraska in the mid 1800s. Have to fact check me on that, but they also much longer life than we would perceive, because we think of these as less modern materials. Uh, Junko and Matt are on here. We can think about Japanese houses or European, say, thatch roofs. Yes, they need replacing, but then again, so do a lot of the asphalt and other roofing systems. So the perception about durability, quality, and I think maybe the last one, modernity, simply thinking about these as older materials rather than modern materials. That was something that came up. One of the contractors here that I'm working with was working with a Native American tribe, and he said they wanted to build housing out of concrete block rather than adobe block or hemp-lime blocks because they thought concrete blocks were more modern. And he tried, he tried lightly. He was like, I don't want to push anyone into building in a way that they don't want to, but certainly uh, he wanted them to understand that actually a lot of us have looked at this curve of, this kind of Anthropocene arc and said, actually, we need to go back a little bit to create a new future.
I think a lot of things changed when we started looking into planned obsolescence, and that became sort of like adopted commonly across the whole spectrum. And then it became about what can we do to control and keep costs down versus putting out quality products, which is why some of these older houses are still kicking butt versus some of these new houses that are not doing so well. When you look at bio-based construction in 2026, where do you feel personally that we're genuinely further along, and where do you feel that we're still behind in the field?
Mm. I think there's been a lot of great work kind of at the high level industry wide to start to create software accounting, and from the energy modeling perspective and the life cycle analysis perspective, to be able to build that infrastructure. It's kind of been happening from the top down. I've been trying to work in a multi-pronged way, so to get involved at the grassroots level, to engage professionals, and then also to try and work on projects as well that move the market. But I would say, big picture, the industry overall has been working from the top, and they're slowly starting to come down in terms of the education amongst professionals. So, like,
Hmm.
there's a bio-based materials collective coming out of Boston that's doing a great job about uh, educating other professionals. And then, and I also, I give guest lectures at universities to try and teach this to the younger students because it was certainly not part of my education. And, if we're trying to help people see this as a way forward, you also want to educate some of the students before, because I've gone through this kind of process of learning and
Hmm.
unlearning. I think many of us these days about a variety of different subjects. And so, um, if I can get a chance to talk to kids and inspire them to see like, hey, whether you're talking about carbon, chemicals, rural, rural economies, inequality overall, systemic inequality, you start to see the potential of these kind of products to, yeah, the bio-based materials collective, um, they're not, it's Mass Design is a Boston-based firm. They're global actually. I mean, they started in Boston, had real success in Africa, and I reached out to them because they looked like they were aligned with this kind of thinking. And I said, I would love you guys to take a look at Hemp-Lime construction because I think it makes a lot of sense for the same reasons that you've had a lot of success in Rwanda and other African countries. So yeah, they've done a great job, and as a very well-known and big firm, yes, bio-based, yes, yeah, they're on
Stay
LinkedIn.
on topic. Stay on topic. I'm not going to get to these questions if we keep going on rabbit holes. So if you can, please.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I appreciate the corralling. Did I answer the question, or should
I think you did. I think you did.
Okay.
But I'm
Yes.
going to actually, I'm going to respond to something else you said earlier and go off script a little bit. So
Yeah.
in your presentation, you just said we need more research. Where do you feel our research is not meeting the mark? Because in the same presentation, you talked about some structures that have been around now 400 years. So, or like, what are we missing, and why? When you describe this, are you describing this from a top down when usually demand usually helps set the market? Why do you feel demand is not growing? And thus, why do you feel the hemp industry is kind of collapsing in some ways?
Yeah. So I would say demand is not growing at the pace that we would really like it to. Because one, I mean, in the U.S. context, anyways, hemp. Most people hear marijuana in their head. Those are two quite different things. One is far closer to bamboo um, than cannabis. So straw, similarly, also that sounds like an old-fashioned material. And I think we've been going through this perception piece, and so the research, like in different parts of the world, sometimes, like in Japan, they have the top 5 construction companies. They've got research institutes, and they'll test materials and they'll do innovation. In the US, it's typically handled more in universities. And part of the way that universities get funded is through grants. I think we've all seen right now that federal grant funding is diminishing, and certainly what I've seen in the hempcrete world, hemp-lime world, has been that many colleges simply are hesitant to get into studying hemp-lime because, again, there's a perception issue, right? Cornell is doing a great job. OSU, they have a global hemp innovation center. Texas A&M got grant funding for 3D printing of hempcrete. There are little pockets around the country, but not enough to say start to build the level of confidence that larger projects which need warranties,
Hmm.
like I need a guarantee that I'm going to spend $20 million on this building, that it's going to last, and
Hmm.
that if there's a problem, that someone is going to be there to help me fix it and come back. And
Well,
so,
you just described a big problem, though. So if there's a warranty problem, that also usually means there may be lack of funding options as well because of the warranty and the bank wants to secure their loan. So are you also seeing this as well when demand of a user wants possibly hemp construction, but they don't have access to modern day or funding options?
that's a great question. Until recently, until the insulation and the fire testing data was out there in the U.S. market, it was very challenging to get a mortgage. So that meant that this is primarily owner builders with the ability to self-fund. That reduces the market right there, right?
Yeah, significantly, right?
Significantly so. And then there was a woman that I talked to after the Los Angeles fires who said similarly, Alex, I've heard of Hemp-Lime. It's a really innovative and interesting product, but there's not enough data yet to be able to reduce the insurance premiums, which would help incentivize the use of this, right? So that yes, we've got 1 hour data in Europe, we've got 2 hour data on both straw and hemp-lime and other alternative building construction materials. But we don't have enough of that in the, I forget what that S curve is when you start to reach a tipping point from the early adopters to more mass market adoption. But that's kind of where we are now. Um, and we
So what
can,
you described, though, sounds like we're not even on a path to get there because of the current sort of state of funding on grants. What do you feel are the best alternatives that if we wanted to take action or help move that needle ourselves? Just a lot of us don't work at universities here, right? What can
right,
we do?
right. Yeah, that is honestly that's the question I've been asking myself. So like last year, Junko and I went after with some other partners a grant to be able to do education, outreach, and also with the idea to help build the market. That was one path. 2025 was a tough year for many people who had gone down that road because a lot of that funding was rescinded.
Hmm.
But that had been the perceived path. And now in 2026, it's nice to have this conversation. Hopefully, you all on the call could maybe make some suggestions because if grant funding is has kind of evolved into a more, at least federal grant funding, has evolved into a more challenging avenue, does that suggest we should be crowdfunding this? Does that suggest, that we need to put on our backpacks and head to Europe for a while and or Australia, other places where these markets are accelerating, and that then we bring back that knowledge and start to kind of cross-pollinate from across the ocean.
If only we had someone like Tristan on the call who could take his storytelling experience overseas and help tell the story for all of us. What you talked a little bit about bio-based materials and their performance. Can we sort of talk a little bit and pivot a little bit about moisture management and long-term maintenance, especially not with hempcrete? Let's talk about things like hay and bales, because you would think that pest control may be an issue here. So if you can talk to someone about moisture management, long-term maintenance on some of these other ones, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think when people start asking that question, they neglect the reality of other modern buildings. So
Fair enough.
I think I forget his name, but one of the gentlemen, Kevin Bayut, was saying that there is the PPP, the purchasing price parity paradox, where it said we have to now produce better materials in many different ways and have them less expensive to be able to have them win over a market that's already saturated with industrially produced products. So I just stay that there. Uh, that said, yeah, to me personally, I think straw bale would have more pest management issues than hemp-lime just because of the nature of its construction. But if you look at the products that are coming out now, the panelized straw bale, some of the products in Europe, chopped straw, they are
Did you
packed.
say panelized straw bale?
Yes. So
Wow. Wow. Okay, you just blew my mind a little bit here. Can you talk a little bit about more about that for just a second?
yeah, so the reason that makes a lot of sense is because one, again, Europe leading the way with off-site prefabricated construction as the way that they produce most of their buildings, not just alternative or, you know, but the way that most of their buildings are made is off-site and prefabricated. If you're going to do that, you start breaking things into panels so that you can transport them. And so offsite prefabricated straw bale panels, hemp lime panels, they've been ways in which we start to add the kind of rigor and systematic logic to what was alternative
Mhm.
into the more mainstream ways of building,
I love
more,
that. Thank you so
more
much.
efficient.
What about maintenance? What are you, where's your knowledge on the maintenance and we'll just say, let's go across the whole spectrum because I know bamboo, has had a history of a lot of people sort of punching bamboo down because they can say it's not, it doesn't have the maintenance on it. So it doesn't have the durability. So, but I know there are alternatives as well. So can you speak to some of this about maintenance?
Yeah, if when I think of bamboo, two images pop up in my head. One, Junko and I were watching a video on traditional Japanese construction, and the bamboo was the structure, and the clay, these were traditional clay walls, were cast around it.
Mm,
Recently, I've seen the same thing happen for hemp lime construction. So instead of using wooden two by fours or two by sixes, they're switching those out and using bamboo structure. In both cases, what you're doing is you're using a material that for its benefits, meaning structural strength and carbon sequestration, natural materials, but you're also protecting it in ways that allow for some of those durability issues to be taken care of. Right? If we think about steel, what do we do in modern buildings with steel? We either put intumescent paint, fire retardant paint on it, or we spray it with what's called monocoat, the gypsum-based fire protection. Most people outside of the world of construction don't know that, but because they think steel is super durable, it's hard. You knock at it, yes, it rusts, but but when we think about it in terms of modern construction, we still protect the steel in, I think construction logic around the world, you protect the structure. And so in that, it's really not that different, but you are using different techniques.
I love it. Thank you. Let's talk about some codes, risk, and adoption here. Which bio-based materials or systems are beginning to move beyond niche with a broader code acceptance? You mentioned this briefly, but if you can go into more detail on this.
Yeah, if you were to look at the design magazines around the world, earthen construction has been getting a lot of attention.
Can you go
Um,
into more of that and explain sort of what that means?
Yeah, so I talk a lot about bio-based materials because I link it to farm-to-table architecture. I think about this intersection between agriculture and architecture. But I think still today, roughly 70% of the world lives in earthen architecture. So in the US, we talk about adobe and round earth, um, but there are places where um, people are now 3D printing with earth. So that's
Wow.
so the fancy way of saying it is, biogenic, meaning bio-based, and
Hmm.
geogenic versus is in like earthen-based. So that has been getting a lot of traction. And then, as much as I would like to say hemp-lime, the reality says that straw bale has been getting more attention as well, specifically because there are a few companies around the world. Um, Mostly in Europe, where they're doing these prefabricated straw bale panels. And so codes, yes, but also companies that are big enough to do the testing to provide the proof of concept.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, we talked a little bit about the barriers within the US, but in certification, insurance, financing, or liability, which do you feel is sort of the long pole in the tent? What's the biggest tree that we have to chop down? Get it, pun. With regards to these that you feel is really blocking us, like the biggest blocker right now.
Hmm. I feel like 2026 moving into 2026, it's a little unclear in that because we achieved code hurdles in 2024, 2025, I think the impact of those it's starting to play out. I think, a lot of us, I was on a few different fire resilience panels after the Los Angeles fires.
Hmm.
Um, and, for an individual client, that may or may not be appropriate. For the kind of larger system thinking, you say, hey, Los Angeles, we need to rebuild in a more resilient way. And if we can do it in a carbon sequestering, healthy way, then should this ever happen in the future, we won't have those same phthalates and dioxins in the air and the water. Um, but I think, right now I would say we're in a at the dawn of this in some ways, so it's unclear to me.
Hmm.
I would love to see, and certainly one facet that I haven't engaged is the insurance markets. A few introductory conversations, but if because when the fire department sees, they get out their flamethrowers and their torches and they test they move from anecdotal, and then you can hand them the 1 and 2 hour tests and say, hey, this really performs, beyond. So we've been kind of breaking down the perception gap,
Yeah.
um, but then feathering that in with the data.
Mm.
If that can now trickle down to the insurance markets, those are, I mean, hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. And that's, I mean, from what I heard from, at least from the LA fires, that starts to become a real lens to define whether you can rebuild in a way that you can afford or not.
Yeah. I think it would be in insurance companies' best interest to look for more viable, even if it is traditional or old school, however you want to say that. But I don't see that happening as much up to this point.
Right.
I want to give you guys an opportunity to circle back. Junko put in here like crowdfunding and blended finances are areas that you guys are planning on. So when we look at the triangle of all this, we need code, we need insurance, and we need financing. We need kind of like something to happen with all three of those in order to make, viable pathways for people to really start adopting on this. Can we talk a
Yeah.
little bit about how you guys are looking into the financing portion of this and making this more accessible?
Yeah. That Junko is actually better at answering that question than me. What we've been looking at
Phone a
is
friend if you need to, whatever. It's up to you. It's your interview, my friend.
yeah, but this is the point at which we kind of shift from being, me presenting to opening up the conversation and then getting it open to the audience.
Okay.
The funding. So we've been looking at accelerators and private foundation grants because yeah, as you're saying, part of it, you really want to take the bull by the horns. You need to shift from architect who's saying this is the visionary path for the future to becoming more this design developed model where you become the one leading the project, and probably one of the more exciting projects in the U.S. Well, two of them examples. Um, Gentleman in southern Colorado who built a stargazing resort with hemp-lime and then geodesic domes. That was all crowdfunded. $1.9 million worth of construction was all
I've
crowdfunded.
seen a lot of geodesic crowdfunding resorts, a lot. So that's quite popular, I feel like, and it's sort of
Right.
like reaching a pinnacle there. And beyond geodesic, you are seeing that for hemp line and alternative bioconstruction as well.
So what I was saying that was mixed together, which was
Okay.
interesting. So and this is the way in which, if you say I'm all in on hemp, people might look at you as somewhat zealot, right? If you say I'm all in on healthy buildings, and in some cases hemp works better, in other cases rammed earth works better for this climate, and in other cases we're doing some kind of meditation retreat or we're doing a resilient community, different materials start to make more sense. Part of that, I think I saw um, Dennis chime in that hempcrete is happening in Oregon, and I've certainly seen. I think there was a project in either Ashland or Grants Pass, somewhere like that. Some beautiful timber and hemp projects mixed together. So part of it is who's got the vision to be able to provide the holistic whole through which these bio-based materials really make sense to support.
I love it. Let me, while we're talking about Dennis here, let me go ahead and weave in Dennis's question. And Dennis, this was a little bit of a mouthful, so forgive me if I mess this up. And actually, do you want to just ask it?
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Bucky Fuller he wrote this Living Re. I think it's an article. I don't think it's a book. I'm not sure. The idea was the gestational lag of technology in different fields. He says in electronics, it's like 1 or 2 years. Now I think it's like 6 months or 3 months. Or you just ask your AI to create it for you, and it's a few minutes, right? And then he says in automotive industry, it's probably like 50 years. In housing, like residential housing, 50 to 75 years. Now, he wrote this in like 1969 or something like that. Is
Yeah,
it still 50 to 75 years technology lag? I mean, I'm in a house that's, I don't know, it's matchstick built, right?
right, right.
So
Yeah, the balloon frame. I went to college in Chicago. The balloon frame was invented in Chicago, in the Midwest. I think that was 1860s, 1870s. So,
well,
and that's continued. And it was all about the ability to build quickly. Buckminster Fuller also put out post-war the Dymaxion house. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but
I've seen it. Yeah.
yeah,
No, please. Could you explain that real quickly?
sure. So he was looking at all the industrialization that had happened to be able to win the war. And he said, how do we take that capacity and use it to start to solve some of the housing issues? And so what he proposed was um, a project he called the Dymaxion house, which was round, prefabricated, and modular. So basically, this is like a larger version of an Airstream trailer. Um, we've seen, like, I don't know, over the last 10, 15 years, a real resurgence in the idea of modular prefab because we're trying to figure out how to reduce construction costs. I think because we've seen quite a few different firms go bankrupt, that
Hmm.
maybe that's not the solution because there are so many different uh, agencies that need to review these things, different local zoning ordinances. And so in some cases, maybe the modular prefab works, and in others it doesn't. And if it doesn't in enough different situations, then it's not scaling to the point at which you can build a viable, large, capital-intensive business.
Well, I would argue that the modular housing and mobile homes are failing because they're a crappy product. Nobody I know who lives in mobile homes likes it.
Yep.
It's full of toxic chemicals. If it burns, it's black smoke all over, full of really
Right.
nasty killer fumes. It's impossible to maintain properly. It's very
Mhm.
expensive to maintain. It devalues your property. It's like a
Interesting.
car, right? So
Yep.
there's so many bad things about it. Of course, people like I'm looking at buying something, and it's mobile homes on property and acreage is really affordable. I'll never live in a mobile home. I don't want to do
Right.
that to my health
Well, the
or my
problem with some
mental
of
health.
that, without going down too much of a rabbit hole, because this could be a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I know quite a few have purchased tiny homes. In tiny homes, when we go back to that triangle, insurance is the problem there. You can't get a tiny home insured because it's not a rinse and repeat process. It's not something that's already been verified over and over and over again on there.
Not necessarily. If it's factory built and certified, there are certifications now. You can get insurance and even loans to get them. But if you build them yourself, very few things you
This
get
is
insurance.
from a manufacturer. Now, granted, this is in Florida, so I imagine all the states are a little different, but I know
That's
several having problems with that. Let me move through this real quick. Martha just brought up a really cool point in here. So she says, coming from the textile world, one of the greatest obstacles we're encountering is in revitalizing regional and national fiber systems is the lack of regional processing for facilities for blast fibers or for BAST fibers. Sorry, I didn't
Mhm.
want to get that wrong there. I'm also seeing this as well. There's a number of documentaries and farmers that are out there that had talked about jumping on the hemp bandwagon and then all of a sudden them having to crumble because
Right.
I think, again, maybe that goes back to the top down, but let's look at this not from a top down or bottom up, but let's look at this from a value stream. Where are we? And I think I know some of the answer on this, but where are we in developing the value streams around hemp products or bio-based products?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when we really began this journey, we left LA in 2021 and moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. One of the companies that was really trying to accelerate this was called Santa Fe Farms. And they've transformed into another company. I reached out to the president there, and he said, Alex, if you'd talked to me just a few years ago, I would have said construction materials for sure. But right now, the thing that looks like it might keep me in business a little longer is animal bedding. And I was surprised. I was kind of surprised, and so lower amounts of investment to produce a product like that than building grade or construction grade herd, like lower dust requirements, higher
Mhm.
higher quality, and so then I know there was last year there was a big gathering in North Carolina about hemp textiles. And so looking at that and saying, okay, we can produce that. There are other countries around the world in which we used to. And so thinking about processing, like 2 years ago, I went to Morton, Minnesota. So the Lower Sioux tribe, which has been, real advocates for this. And there was a map of how many hemp processing centers there used to be, like roughly
Mhm.
100 years ago. It was shocking to me to see dozens and dozens of hemp processing centers, so that this was exactly what we want it to be, or what we think we need it to be successful, which is regionally, within, the lead local material credit is say 500 miles. If we had a hemp or just say bio-based material processing center every 500 miles, we would be in a totally different place. But there isn't, right? There isn't yet the market. So
Yeah.
there's some gentlemen in California that have been looking at taking cotton ginning equipment that's older and refurbishing it to be able to handle hemp. And so then you can imagine you're buying older equipment or disused equipment and renovating it. It's like any modern construction. A new house is more expensive than an older house that you renovate.
Mm.
So,
In
I
some cases,
wonder.
that older industrial equipment is probably better than maybe modern as well. Go back to,
right, right. We think, yeah,
yeah,
right. It wasn't produced for planned obsolescence. It's
yeah,
produced for
absolutely.
durability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Martha, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I've been working on this for years. Um, I don't have a lot of confidence in fashion reviving these systems. I have much more faith in building material, paper products, packaging, all sorts of things. And so I've been over the years getting to know people in these different areas, these different fields. Um, and the biggest challenge is, so I'm in Switzerland. We grow, it's just a kind of a small project of about 7 hectares of flax. Switzerland used to grow a lot of, had a lot of linen. Linen was a big industry in Switzerland. Now the flax has to be, it's baled and sent to the Netherlands to be broken. So hemp and flax have the same process. It's very different from cotton. They have to break the fibers, extract the, I mean, break the stalks, extract the fibers. So the machinery is very different. And then the chives or they're all different names for the woody
Yeah.
products that fall. That is perfect animal bedding because it's antimicrobial naturally. So we lose all of that. And then once the fibers are extracted, they're sent to Poland to be spun because we no longer have any linen or flax or hemp spinning facilities. So it's doing this circular, circumnavigating the globe kind of circular
We
economy.
we we
Uh,
have we have to. I'm just going to put this out there.
yeah,
As a globe, start looking at decentralized industrialization,
exactly.
Yes.
micro-industrialization. In
Yeah.
this
Yes.
world, the fact that we don't have that and we're reliant on so many supply chains across
Exactly.
countries is
It's all, and
mind-boggling.
ultimately it's all about relationships because when you do things regionally, it creates jobs. It feeds local economies. There's
Yeah.
expertise. And so if you were to look, I mean, Colleen knows all about Fibershed and probably Nikki and others as well. Fibershed, if you look into what they're doing, basically for the textiles end, um, you know, we need to use the whole animal, the whole beast. And
Yeah.
so fibers are one thing. Then you have the seeds that can be used and the oils. But there's a company in I think it's in Nova Scotia called Taproot Fibers, and they realized that they didn't have processing equipment, so they worked with some people to develop small scale. So you can actually have in barns around, you can process the whole thing. And then the same thing with wool. You
Yeah.
didn't talk at all about wool, and I probably no time for that, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
But
Let's do this. Martha, I would
yeah,
love to have you come on and interview about something around these and just
sure.
about
Yeah.
value stream enablement,
Great.
because I think there's a lot of lessons learned we can pick up from other areas. And if we started building centralized opportunities to learn about these and test these things in local bioregions, I think we would have more of that ground up effect that we need to help
Absolutely.
solve some of
Yeah.
this. But
Please, I'll
Absolutely.
second that. Yeah. Southern
yeah,
Oregon really needs that perspective, that holistic
so if we
manufacturing and
can,
food
Martha,
production.
find me on
Yeah.
Slack on
Okay.
GRC. I would love to schedule
Okay.
another interview for Let's Go on this. Alex, coming back
Okay.
to you. We're at
Yes.
about our last 10 minutes here. So we're going to go
Thank you.
rapid fire on some of these questions, guys. So I'm not trying to rush to the end of this, but I did want to get through a lot of these questions first, and then we can open up and have open chat. So let's jump in here. Climate impact and life cycle reality. So what do we now understand about the true climate impacts of bio-based materials when the full life cycle carbon is considered, including feedstock production, embodied carbon sequestration, and end-of-life scenarios?
Yeah. I was hoping Carl Welty might join because he and I chatted about wood. So
Oh, and Carl is
I
anti-wood for anyone who
Don't get
doesn't
him
know that about
started. Don't
Carl.
get him started.
so I got him started when I was first getting into the GRC, and I said, well, actually, one of the things that made Hemp-Lime make sense to me was that I had seen that there was a 40-year lag between when mass timber, which is using big, basically really thick plywood and big heavy timbers, started in Austria and then came until it started coming to the Pacific Northwest. And so similarly, I looked at hemp lime and I thought Europeans started this in the early 1980s. They were storing additional. Anyway, so we got to talk about that, and he said, really, if you start diving into the embodied carbon of wood, it doesn't make as much sense as everyone thinks it does because you start ripping up those forests, and there is far more carbon in the entire system of the forest than there is just in the tree, which is what a lot of people start looking at. And so I think kind of circling back to what we talked about earlier, in that the data is we're getting more granular in the data. And so when you start understanding, the from the production, the growing, all the way all through the entire life cycle analysis, that what had begun as like the right idea starts breaking down and maybe not such a good idea. And that's where we That's where we do. We shift to saying, actually, if this were small scale, selective cutting, you're now thinning forests to reduce fire risk. And the mass timber uses small diameter trees, so all of those things started to make sense. With hemp and straw and some of these other materials, um, when I was first getting into this, there were people who said, Alex, it makes way more sense to grow hemp as a rotation crop. So people were talking about increased yields from potatoes or other crops that they're typically growing there. And that alone was starting to drive the economic discussion about why it made sense to grow there. In which case now you've got a waste product.
And real quick,
Yep.
industrial hemp, what's
Yep.
your life cycle, your growth cycle on that? How many months?
Roughly 3 months.
3 months. Thank you.
Yep.
That's important.
One season. Yeah.
Super important, right? So if we think bamboo, as amazing as it is, 3 to 5 years, hemp,
Hmm.
maybe 3 months, and then you start to say, okay, well, one is structural, so 3 to 5 years for bamboo makes way more sense when you think of 10 to 20 years for even a small diameter tree. But if you're thinking about insulation, bio-based insulation products, well, there's denim insulation. Where's that coming from? Cotton. If
Hmm.
you think about wool insulation, if you think about hemp fiber or hemp wool insulation, the similar kind of thing. Those are only a few months as the timeline. And so I think one of the questions that we were maybe intending to talk about but haven't gotten to yet is, why is this so important now, right? So architecture 2030 is a real North Star for the construction industry, or at least the architecture industry, because the more that we can do now to shift the carbon profile of our buildings, the more impact it has on the next series of buildings from
Yeah.
2030 to 2050,
Well,
which
we
is
look at it as just carbon though, but we also should look at what are the fastest reproducing supply chains that we can grow on there as well. And that's like both of those in alignment makes perfect sense. Then let's just keep destroying our forests.
right. Yeah, and at that point you start thinking about what is the highest value use of all of this stuff. So actually, I think most of us would rather say, I'd rather keep the Amazon, and that we fund it as a carbon sink. We may also think that about the forests in Canada or across the US, and those are important to regrow. Uh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to skip over the economics and the policy stuff in here just because I feel like we have a little bit of a anomaly in the US for those who don't know with this administration. So I'm going to skip over that for right now. And let's go into whole systems outcomes. So beyond carbon metrics, what evidence are you seeing that bio-based materials contribute to improved indoor health, resilience, and broader community outcomes? So easy layup for you.
Indoor health. If you don't have chemicals, toxic chemicals in the processing or the manufacture of the materials that you're making your building with, you won't have them on off gassing into the indoor air quality, right? So there's a group called the Parsons Healthy Materials Lab in New York. They've done studies. There was a Pennsylvania hemp house, and they proved a 400% reduction of formaldehyde in the indoor air quality. Formaldehyde
Formaldehyde.
sounds like a long complex
Nasty.
word, but really cancer causing agent. Just say
Yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah.
New carpet smell, new car smell, new cancer smell. Just call it that. And
The
then,
carcinogens in modern day construction are massive. So yes,
right.
absolutely. How should practitioners think about performance at the beginning? Excuse me. How should practitioners think about performance at the building system level rather than at the material level alone?
Yeah, so this is one that we talked about a little bit in Turkey. When I was getting into architecture, the first word that I heard about energy performance was R value.
Hmm.
Having spent enough time with hempcrete, Hemp-Lime, I've learned in some of these other bio-based systems, I've learned that actually the total thermal performance, what we're really talking about, so kind of larger assembly or systems thinking, is R value, thermal mass, and hygrothermal, meaning moisture management. So if it's 80 degrees and 100% humidity, it feels quite different than it does here in Tucson, Arizona, when it's 30, 40% humidity. And so managing that Humidity also becomes a part of how much energy use we're using, and so it's more layered. And one of the interesting things in the US is we don't test that way. We're typically using more what are called prescriptive codes, saying, I want an R20 wall. Well, maybe you don't want an R20 wall if you've got thermal bridging, meaning the cold coming from the outside into the inside, and cavities where maybe not the full wall is filled up. So that's thinking about it more holistically in terms of the performance.
Yeah, we love to favor reductionist thinking when we build policy around standards. So
Right.
it shoots us in the foot more often than not. Guys, before I go into the closing questions, we are going to wrap up the call here. So thank you all for coming on. I'll get into the closing questions and we'll continue on. But for purpose of time wise, I want to respect everyone's time. We're at the top of the hour, so if you need to drop off, I perfectly understand. Um, I hope you like regenerative iteration. This is really trying to get away from the anti-talking head and really trying to sort of develop better understanding of the good, the bad, and the ugly of regeneration because this stuff is hard. And a lot of people come into this with energy and like, oh, this is gonna be so great, it's gonna be so wonderful, and really don't understand the work it takes to actually get some of these things moving along. That said, I need more interviews. So if you know anyone who wants to be interviewed, if you want any follow-up series or you're like, oh my gosh, I would love just to chat about this, we can do it as an interview. We can do it even as a panel discussion as well if you want to bring a friend or along on some of these. But these conversations are great and usually they kind of get the juices going for follow-up conversations as well. So I've heard a lot of people, oh, I had a follow-up and talk with so-and-so. And we've had some great people and we've been really blessed with Bill Reed and some of these other great people that have come in here, David Leventhal, and um, my boy Will Ruddick, who I just love to pieces. So by all means, if you know anyone who wants to come on here, or if you'd like to come on yourself, I'd love to be able to interview you. So I don't have anyone for next week. So if anyone
Did
here,
you get
hey,
Mickey? Did you get Mickey who lives down there in Costa Rica near Nikki? Mickey with an M. They're doing the LiDAR assessments, solar assessments for
through drones,
yeah.
I would love to interview on that one. So if you can hit me up on Slack, Dennis,
Yeah.
more information on that, I will do the outreach if I need to. So thank you. Thank you for the lead. That's awesome. All right, guys, let's finish these questions and then we'll go into just open chat. So, looking towards 2030, where do you see the most critical leverage points for accelerating bio-based construction, design practices, finance policy, education, or cultural perception?
Yeah, I think there was an article recently that came out from a gentleman, Blaine Brownell, in Architect Magazine, and he was, I don't know if I'll be able to find it while talking, but he was saying why wood is no longer the default bio-based material. And I was super appreciative. I reached out to him about 18 months ago and was kind of like poking him on Hemp-Lime. Uh, Someone who has a track record like that. I mean, I think I'm great, wonderful, but someone who's got 20-year track record talking about materials and the import, fluent in a range of different facets of, what moves the market. Someone like that starts saying we need to shift from thinking about wood as the default to thinking about, rapidly renewable, regionally appropriate materials. Then people start listening. So the Healthy Materials Lab, as in Parson that I mentioned before, they've been doing an amazing job of this. Uh, but now other folks starting to come on board. It's definitely been filtering up. And when we get to present this at AIA National, then people will start paying attention a little bit more. There was a regenerative materials summit at the Living Future Institute last year, and you can bet that I was also poking and pushing them to try and get them to incorporate more of these bio-based materials and specifically hemp-lime because there has been professional risk. Like you look kind of like a crazy person until people start really understanding the underlying logic. So I think we're getting there.
Well, even
And
the logic within hemp itself, like Martha talked a little bit about the different parts of hemp where so much we can use, including the oils and the flowers
right,
and all that. But the way it's grown at an industrial level versus grown at a level where you're pulling flowers and all that, completely different as well. So when
right,
you're looking at industrial grown hemp, it's grown tight and packed together, and it does not typically flower. So there's a lot of there's a lot of nuances in the conversation that we could go deep that we really only scratched the surface. So I agree with you 1,000%. We need to have more of the right people starting to talk about these things.
Yeah, the largest policy conversation shift that happened last year um, was the real clear schism between CBD hemp and industrial hemp in the U.S. market. Because since 2018, there's been a lot of people who've been saying, well, this is hemp, and therefore it's one plant, and you should look at it.
Hmm.
But actually, they're grown so differently, and they're for such different uses. One, confusing toxic or medicinal, depending on your lens, versus industrial and really as a totally different feedstock for building materials, biocomposites, textiles, things like that. That separating those two alone, that has been a huge perception shift for 2026 that I'm looking forward to, because I think that has positive ramifications.
Wait, are you saying they're different species, or are you saying that they're just different uses?
They're very similar species, different strains, but very similar species, uh, or same species, different strain, but they're grown really quite differently. I've got on the bigger presentation that I normally give, a little picture of little Christmas trees spaced out every so often to get the plant to really grow the flower
Mm.
versus fields where literally hundreds of thousands of plants all grown together very closely so that they are forced to grow up,
Ah,
and therefore have much bigger, the herd, the shiv that Martha was talking about, uh, because that's 80% of the plant. If that's what you're growing it for, then forcing it to grow up it's a different,
yeah, makes sense. So the agricultural practice, how it's grown, is very different,
it's
and even
really,
the strain is slightly
Hmm.
different too. Because we
yeah,
have a lot of CBD hemp production here in Southern Oregon for sure,
I can
but I haven't
imagine,
heard
yeah.
of any industrial construction hemp being grown.
Correct. And I think, normally in growing practice, that for sure the marijuana folks and then the industrial hemp folks are kind of at different ends of the spectrum, because one can, if there's marijuana plants, and I think the same with horticultural CBD plants, they can affect the germination of the industrial hemp plants. And
Oh,
industrial hemp is supposed to be kept at 0.3% THC or less, so
yeah.
that you're not using it for, like you're getting a regulate. Now it's been regulated, and people, farmers have been fingerprinted for growing industrial hemp, even when its end use is for a building material, which makes no
Mm.
sense. But so if the two cross-pollinate, it actually, it's unwanted by both parties. And so if the market has started as a CBD market, it probably wants to stay it as a CBD market, because that's where the entrenched interests are, right? The only problem is the CBD market's gone through a roller coaster. People thinking this is a gold rush. I'm going to grow a whole bunch of CBD, and then find out, well, now because we grew so much of it, it's not the value we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's a market supply and demand market
Yeah.
fluctuations. And now that's legalized, the Southern Oregon is struggling. It had a huge thriving cannabis industry, and now they still produce it. It's just that the price is so cheap,
Yep.
so readily available.
Yeah.
Martha, I appreciate you dropping all these valuable links, all these read more links in
I
chat. That's
know. I can't
awesome.
wait
So you
to
guys
dive
Yeah,
click
they're
on
in.
some of those.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, some really good follow-up links on there. So that's awesome. Martha, you should come on every single one of these calls. No, I'm joking. But I appreciate this.
You're
As long
hired.
as you're
Alex,
talking about natural materials, I'm here.
I got
Oh
you, man.
yeah.
So,
Well,
Alex, I
I
got two
share
actually,
the
final
end
questions,
use.
and then I'll
Okay.
open up to everyone so we can just sort
okay.
of chat here. So, first
Yeah.
one, Alex, if we want to stay involved with you and we want to follow up and keep up with what's going on with you and with Junko and your work and the breadth of your work, what's the best way to do that, to follow you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so that's one way of getting a hold of me. Obviously, email is, it's on my website, and then I'm the treasurer for this nonprofit that was just recently formed, Heart of New Earth. So this is a collaboration, Junko and I, and several other partners around the world, trying to accelerate, just innovative system change. And Junko would say a lot of distributed systems as a focus. And obviously I'm the kind of architecture person, but we're kind of agnostic in that sense. So if we see a creative project that wants to be accelerated, we've got a range of different lenses. So Heart of New Earth, Junko, is it .com or org? I forget which. .com. I'm lip reading there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's .com.
Yeah.
I
Thank you
just
so much.
dropped it. Sorry.
All right, Alex. So my last question: if I were a smarter person and I compiled much better questions than I've compiled here, what's the one question I should have asked you, but I've been remiss and not asked?
I think we've covered a range of great subjects.
We
So
did.
yeah.
We were pretty extensive in here. Anything popping up that you wish I would have asked?
Yeah, I mean the questions that I wish I knew the answers to, we'll reframe it and say it that way. That I wish I were a little bit more fluent on the farming side of things to be able to help you guys understand some of the challenges there. But that's you have no industry without farmers, to the same extent that you have no industry without bio-based material fluent architects. Or yeah, to me, I wish I could find the right developer to work with, and because we haven't been seeing it. That's why we've been starting to explore, this shift to design, develop, or collaborate with partners to accelerate those projects.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Alex, you've been a great sport. I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much. We've learned a lot from you, and I appreciate your journey. I know it's a hard one, but the fact that you're going to these places and dropping, into your thoughts in other people's ears, especially some of these bigger hitters, heavy hitters out there. I big fan, big fan. So thank you so much for all you do. Matt, I saw you come off of mute and on camera for a bit. So you guys, this is open chat. So by all means, if you want to come out and have a conversation or a plug or anything you want to ask about, please.
Only because you mentioned my name, I will respond. I don't necessarily need to say anything here, but I've been really grateful. I'm really grateful to Alex for sharing everything. Sage, I'm grateful to you for doing all of this. I'm feeling called for a lot of different reasons to move to the Lake Champlain bioregion. Very soon. It's a huge shift for me, really unexpected. And I think mostly I'm very grateful because I'm thinking a lot about this exact conversation, but with an additional kind of culture lens on it. And how does like culture and materials and all of this kind of interrelate with one another? I really appreciate having an architectural perspective on the call, a materials perspective on the call, Dennis coming from a contractor perspective. And like you mentioned a developer, there's an eco village at Ithaca, New York that's doing eco village level development of housing. And I've been really, really appreciating kind of all the light ups from this conversation. And so, I'm just.
Can you tell us more about your move? Why? What's the calling for, and what are you hoping to get out of it? Sorry, it's the question part. I started the series because I'm like an inquisitive kind of guy.
Yeah, of course. I honestly, yeah, the spirit of Lake Champlain has called me to move there in my animist relationship to the land. My wife and I do ritual work on the land, pretty extensively and have for quite some time. And we do a lot of like art ritual work currently, primarily around grief, primarily around nature connection, ancestor stuff, that sort of stuff. So, but for a lot of different reasons, I've been working in the radon mitigation industry for a little while. It was making me sick, the amount of PVC waste that was just kind of being generated by the whole thing. And so I started I've just been very interested in the bio-based construction materials for a long time. I was really inspired by the book Cradle to Cradle when I was like 18 or 19, and it really influenced my life, for the last 20 years. And so I've been tracking this. I just feel very grateful to be in the conversation. But in terms of the Champlain thing, I really feel like there's, for some reason, a call to really create a new culture around this sort of stuff and to be really fucking bold because I have very little to lose in life. And so I feel like a real sense of like wanting to push for people like y'all to like, yeah, be doing this work at scale in a
I
in
love
a
it. I
in a
love
way
the
that's easy.
calling. Sorry, I was just
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
interested
No,
Yeah,
because
I
thank
was
you.
when
curious
the
too.
calling hits, like it's powerful and it's worth sharing too. So I
Yeah.
love that. So I wish the best of luck for you on that
Yeah,
journey.
thanks. Yeah.
Totally.
That
I
lake
think.
slapped the shit out of me. It was great.
That's awesome. Hello.
Yeah, I think a few different things. One, I didn't ask you the question to ask of me, like how else am I volunteering or helping to accelerate this? And one of the reasons that pops up is I volunteer on the technical advisory group for NYSERDA, so the New York State Energy Research Department, and they are currently doing a natural materials or carbon storing materials research study, and Hemp-Lime is part of that, so that's why I'm on the group. That is leading to it's going to lead to a pilot study, as far as I understand, somewhere in upstate New York.
Awesome.
They're looking at basically healthy or carbon storing energy retrofit
Awesome.
possibilities. And so, and lots of people have said that early on, like Alex, new construction, great, but retrofit renovation makes a lot of sense too. That's one thing. And then I have been involved. I used to be on the board of the U.S. Hemp Building Association. And then now I'm on the AIA Committee on the Environment and the local Southern Arizona AIA boards. So trying to address in multiple different ways. But the thing that made me want to speak up was I think one of the interesting calls that would be for a future regeneration and iteration is um, conversations about all of us trying to find fertile ground to build this project. So, like
Mm,
Dennis just said, I moved from Silicon Valley up to Southern Oregon. Um, Matt's saying I'm going to move from Massachusetts over to Lake Champlain. We left LA, where I'd been practicing for about 20 years, and moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I thought this was going to be like Adobe 2.0. That made a lot of sense there. Didn't really take much traction. And now we're here in Tucson, and we don't know for how long, because um, it's been a good base in many ways to change our thinking, but maybe not the most fertile ground for
mm.
building in this way. And in fact, we've got a few friends in upstate New York who've been kind of leading us to think, well, and with this group, we can say we've been looking at astrocartography, ways to understand places that may be most beneficial. And upstate New York was on the radar for us as well for similar
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Al.
Any other questions, comments for the groups? Anyone want to come out and chat for a little bit? Go ahead, Martha.
Alex, did you say you're in New Mexico now?
We were in New Mexico. We moved there to Santa Fe from 2021, but now we're in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, okay, because yeah, that's where Regenesis is based, and so
They
there you
are,
have
and
lots of good partners.
yeah, both Architecture 2030 and Regenesis are in Santa Fe. And when we were there, it was kind of the second half of COVID, or what seemed to be like the forever extension of COVID there, largely a more elderly and Native American population, so at-risk folks who very hesitant to go out. I tried reaching out to both of them, Regenesis and Architecture 2030, many times, couldn't get through to them. Disappointing, because I think
Yeah,
these are, yeah, and so I have looked at becoming a, the Regenerative Practitioner series.
yeah,
Uh,
that's good.
it is good. You've
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah. And Bill Reed, Sage, you said you had Bill Reed on?
Yeah, we had Bill
He's
Reed.
Oh,
We interviewed
amazing.
him
fabulous.
last year.
Yeah,
It was
it
it was
was.
phenomenal.
Gotta love Bill.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and he really opened up my mind just to do the whole concept of the potential of place. And I just thought it was that was something that knocked me over like,
Yeah,
hello. Just that,
Mhm.
that little statement on there. So yeah, what a great person to learn from.
yeah.
And
And
I think it's
it
go
sounds
ahead.
like Matt, like what you're talking about. It's like really this bioregional work. It's really all about place. It's about, I mean, I look at the whole world through fibers because they're grown. food and fiber are friends and building.
Yeah.
And the more like every
Yeah.
time you meet someone else, I mean, it's all interconnected, everything. And so like, what are the cultural traditions in that region? What materials did they work with traditionally,
Yeah.
before they had, fossil fuel fibers or other things? So I think it's such a beautiful place to start from, is your place and what are the
Yeah.
things that were once made in that area. And then I feel like it's a language, this language of craft and making goes across it's geography and time. It's
Mm.
what links us as human beings, humanity, the way we make stuff from what nature provides and how we feed ourselves and clothe ourselves and shelter ourselves. So yeah, it's very discouraging to see what's happening from my native country across the pond. It's very heartbreaking. But
Yeah.
communities like this, like we don't need government. We just do it ourselves,
Mhm.
through relationships.
Mhm.
Yes. We need more places of that where we don't have the fear to try new things. And
Yeah.
that shouldn't be like a novel concept. It should be something that's just ingrained in all of us. Colleen,
I
please. Sorry, Dennis. Go ahead, please.
Go
You can
ahead.
respond
Colin
first.
hasn't talked yet. Go ahead, Colin. You wait.
My system is a little unstable today, so I apologize for that. But I really agree with Martha about localized. I have people almost every day contacting me saying we have an inn. Oh, I'm sorry. We have an in with the government and we can get you grants and so on. And I just say no, because I want this locally funded. And it's really important. There's too many variations of political influence, and it's actually very frightening to me that programs come and they go, and there's so much waste. I mean, I'm very, very concerned about the national debt and all of that. So I'm glad that they're cutting down, but at the same time, the programs that get cut, they're cutting good ones along with the bad ones, and so that's problematic too. But I just wanted to say thank you to Alex. We're Rainbird Rising and Rainbird Village is working with an architectural firm called Arch Nexus or Architectural Nexus. And it's based both in Salt Lake City and somewhere in California. I think I'm not sure which city in California, but you may want to contact them. They'd be very interested in the kind of work that you're doing. But we've essentially contracted with them to do a living building challenge building for us. And so the Regenerative Arts and Ecologies Institute needs a home, and we've decided that that particular building should be a living building challenge building. And so, but you're welcome to also check us out. We're rainbirdrising.org. Rainbirdvillage.com. Both of those websites will let you know what we're up to. But I'm very excited about what you're doing, and I just want to encourage you to continue for the sake of all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting dance. I think we've had some of the threads of this conversation in other ways with this group, the dance between collaboration and competition. So like I could have a friendly intro call with the Arch Nexus folks, and they're like, oh, we're happy to take as much, whereas I'd be like, hey, I'd love to do some consulting with you guys and help you kind of shift your lens a little bit. And they're like, well, we've got some talented people here. We don't need that. So finding that edge of and discerning who is collaborative, and because regenerative material is great, regenerative systems, great, but also regenerative relationships and regenerative finance, right?
Oh,
If
amen.
right, if
Yeah.
you're willing to take advantage of my time and energy and not return the favor in some way, well then I can't stay in business. I can't keep doing this. But with a group like this, it's very collaborative. I'm happy to share, and so I appreciate the opportunity, Sage, and for all of you guys hopping on today. And
Well,
We
thank you
sure
Thank
very
you.
appreciate you
much.
coming
Yeah.
and giving your time. Thank you so much,
That's great.
Yeah.
Alex.
you're welcome.
Yeah, I know that for our projects, we're very interested in local materials. I mean, we're on the side of a granite mountain. Why not use granite? You know, I
Mhm.
mean, it's things like that. I mean, the stones are literally just laying around. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, we're going to need stone cutters for sure, but beyond that, you know, the material's just there. Why not use it?
Mhm.
So, but also, you know, the whole bio-based thing. I mean, we can grow hemp in 3 months. That's awesome. That's within our window of being able to do something.
Yeah.
So why not? And so I'm really excited about what you've told us today, and want to continue working with that. So.
Great. Yeah, I mean, we move the needle one project at a time and one conversation at a time. So neat to hear you excited.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Tristan, good to
Nice.
see you on camera. Do you got any final
Yeah.
comments or questions or anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna. It's funny that this session was so timely because I just got back from a trip with a project manager for a construction company. We just that just happens to be his job, and I help them with content. So I'm occasionally on construction sites and filming progress, and so that they can use it for brand videos and hiring videos and stuff like that. But anyway, he had an interest in starting like a podcast related to construction because they get asked so many questions by different clients. They do mostly high-end homes in like the Pebble Beach, Carmel, Monterey area. Um,
Mhm.
and so I just, a couple of the topics he brought up were like smart homes, renewable energy. He didn't mention building materials, like renewable building materials, but I imagine they also get asked about that. So anyway, I just thought it was just like it was very timely that this came up on my calendar because we were just talking about how
Mhm.
you, at least from the construction side, um, how you communicate things with the homeowners, um, so that they feel like they're a part of the process and
Yeah.
they feel confident about the decisions you're making. You or the architect are making. So,
Yeah, there was a gentleman who used to live in Carmel, right near Pebble Beach, whose family owned a multi-generational construction company. He had to deal with black mold, and
mm,
the way that he came out on the other side, he thought fresh air energy recovery ventilators or heat recovery ventilators, meaning bringing more fresh air in than code would require.
mm,
And I thought, well, that's interesting, but there's a few more steps after that that you can take in terms of like really thinking, like in America, we want to solve symptoms. We don't want to solve root issues. And when you
right.
start looking at root issues, it opens up a whole can of worms, which is both exciting, time consuming, and then but if you can really channel it, then you say, hey, this is the new direction forward for me. I need to figure out ways to make it financially viable, but this should be the kind of thinking. I don't care about the material for a second, for so much for a second. If we're just thinking about the way that we're approaching a,
Mm,
a project and a process and a relationship, and all those things come together. So if some folks are more tech oriented, they would say, yeah, I want smart home energy systems. I want, I want all the best solar panels, and I want this and that. And then you say, well, that's great too, but have you heard about like passive house?
mm,
That you could add some more insulation, spend a little bit more of your energy bill up front in terms of additional insulation, and have fewer utility costs later down the road,
right.
right? So I often say, like, I'm actively approaching passive, to put those two in time. that a lot of times we think technology, and this is a slide I keep meaning to make, but the difference between the plant leaf and the solar panel, both are turning energy from the sun into something else. One is biomass, you know, has a value, has energy locked into it. The other, a much more usable form, but I think we forget that technology, that nature has pretty amazing technology in its own way. Um, so that's one thing. The other there, one group that I didn't put in there was, say, the building biology group, Baubiologie. They're coming from Germany, but they're people who are interested in EMF and some of the other facets of what makes a healthy home for people. So, like in Europe, my sister lived in Zurich for many years, and she said actually we call it electrosmog in Europe. We call it EMF, so it sounds like tin hat thinking. But when you call it a electrosmog, then it sounds and so that's you start thinking about technology and then the impacts of technology and best use of technology. I'm getting on my soapbox. We should go
No, that's really interesting. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I
All right. Well, maybe,
what you just said real quick, when you talk about EMF, are they adding Faraday cages to houses? What are they doing? Like, what is the common accepted thing on this? And is it something that you can conquer that with biomaterials? I was just curious because I don't know how those overlap.
yeah. So I think number one thing that a lot of people do, they'll use shielded wiring conduit instead of just regular conduit. And so that's one thing. And then two, yeah, a lot of these biomaterials, if they're part of it is about density, right? The other part of it is about kind of the ability to transmit or block uh, electricity or EMF, microwave. Um, and I have been told anecdotally that hemp-lime is really good at blocking um, EMF, but I don't know. I don't dive into that so much, and so it's an area I'd be curious to research, but yeah, biomaterials can certainly block drywall, does not
Hmm.
blocking, right? And so I think part of it just simply is density of material. That's the same for acoustics, right? You prevent noise from transferring through. But beyond that, I would say area I need to do some more research on.
Okay, I was just curious. Took a flyer,
Yep.
so I
Yeah.
appreciate you fielding it. All right, thank
Cool.
you y'all so much. We're about 30 past. And if there's any final questions, please ask. If not, we're gonna wrap this up and let Mr. Alex commence with his day. Anything else? Nope. Gone. All right, Alex, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're
Guys, thank
welcome.
you so much for the great questions and the engagement. Martha, love all the links. You were like a rock star today with the support on that. I think Alex should be paying you and you should be joining him on all these other calls too. So thank you guys so much. Alex, we love what you're doing. So please keep us informed as things unravel or not unravel, excuse me, unfold, especially if there's new things that come out or maybe bad things as well. I think it'd be great to hear about those. So if you have any big shifts one way or the other, please share that with the group on the channel, and maybe come back and we can chat about it.
Sounds good. All
All
right.
right.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.